Good evening, fish people. It's nice and quiet at home, so I thought I'll just do a video on my free aquariums. I'll quiet unless my dachshund Lulu decides to pipe up. But let's start with the oldest tank in the house, and this is the I put it there as a 75 gallon, but it's a little less. It's not a standard size, about 4 foot. And then quite high from bottom to top, holds about 270 liters of water. You can go work it out what that is in gallons. And it's a deep substrate, dirted, planted tank. Everything is what we call low tech. There's a cheap-ish, I don't want to say cheap, it's over 1,000 Rand in South Africa. But it's not one of your high-end lights. It's a Neo Helios Aqua Nice. I think the name's changed to Debo now. LED light on top of it. Gets about 8 to 10 hours of light a day, so I keep it on for quite some time. And you'll see on the right-hand corner at the back there's a Tidal 55 hang-on back filter. There's a sponge in there and some pumice or sea-chem matrix. Is basically pumice stone. And then to the left, behind that clump of spiderwood, there is a air-driven sponge filter, and to the right of it you can see it making some waves there in the Java fin. That is internal power filter, also just sponges as media. Why the air-driven filter? Well, we have load shedding in South Africa. So that means, well, currently we have in a 12-hour cycle, we've got 2.5 hours break in the power, and then there's a air pump there with a AC/DC air pump that just switches over onto its own battery. So that sponge filter keeps running straight through the power outages, and that way I always have some circulation and biological filtration going. The tank is really low maintenance. This tank has been standing here in the spot for over 15 years, but as a deep substrate it's been about 6 months now, I think, 4, 5 to 6 months. It's been for a while. It used to just be a normal substrate of, first it was pool filter sand and then it was blasting sand, but only about 2 inches or so, not more than that. And the only plants that I had in here were Java fern. Grew into a big jungle, started dying back a little bit. And I changed to a black blasting sand. I suspect the black sand absorbed some of the light, maybe. It's a theory that I have. And then I tried the deep sand substrate in one of my other tanks, with 30 gallon or 29 gallons, about 120 liters, that one. And it worked really well. So I did the same thing here on the big tank. Now fish, there's that big old angelfish. She's a female. Used to be part of a pair, used to breed in a smaller tank quite a lot. But then this one started beating up her mate, and because of her aggression, I thought originally this one was a female because of the shape of her head. But then because of her aggression, I thought this must be the male then. And I separated them. The male has since the other one has since passed on, and I thought this one was a male because of her aggression issues. And then suddenly there were eggs on the power filter behind that clump of spiderwood. And so it's been the female all along. I was right, and females can sometimes be just as bad as the males in terms of aggression. Who would have known? There's some 3 Harlequin rasboras left there. They're very old. They've been here for close to 10 years. There's some white cloud mountain minnows that's also been there for years. There's some rummy noses. I've replenished the show over the years, but there must still be 2 or 3 of our regionals left. And there's 2 black widows or black skirt tetras that's been here from the very start. And then you also see some nice size Colombian tetras. What else? There's some clown noches in there that you don't see now. Some Otto Cinclus. There's two very big, not so big yet, but fat Siamese algae eaters. And there's two bristlenose cats on Cistrus. I think there by the cave you can see the one move his fins. And there's also a nice group of emperor tetras. I'm going to try and zoom in a little closer and we see what we can do. There you'll see white clouds. There's a golden white cloud. He had a bite taken out of his tail, but it's already growing back. They're very tough, tenacious, underrated community fish. They can even go in unheated tanks. Here you see some of the female emperor tetras. And wiggling underneath the spider wood we have our bristlenose somewhere there. And of course cardinal tetras. Absolutely love cardinal tetras. There you hear my dachshund shaking herself off. She's going to come down the stairs here. Rummy nose tetras. Great shoaling fish. They're always in a sort of a tight shoal. Just love them. I think I've spotted the male. No, it's still a female emperor tetra. I warned you about the dachshund. There's a bristlenose. Lulu, shoo. Some nice cryptocorynes here. There you see a little Otto going about his business. Don't ask me what they are. If the people at the store didn't know, and I suspect they are cryptocoryne, spiralis. That one there, Cryptocoryne spiralis, and to the right, Cryptocoryne wendi. But I can't tell you. And you'll see the Vallisneria has absolutely just taken over. There were some Amazon sword plants in between there, but I'm afraid the Vallis is out competing it completely. And you see there's some Java fern, Anubias. There's that really old black skirt tetra that I told you about. Now the angel's in front of him. And there's some of those Bolivian tetras, quite big by now. There's a black skirt underneath. So they've also quite a few years old. Big size, quite fat. That's the dilemma with a community aquarium. It has got its disadvantages. Some fish are better at getting at the food than others. And these guys get more than their fair share. Hence the sort of thick set fat bodies. It's not too good for them, but what can you do? And there at the back you can see the Siamese algae eater resting on a leaf, sticking out there. There's a really beautiful emperor tetra, a male that I'm trying to find, but it's not so easy. Now when you're looking for him, he's hiding somewhere in the plants. There's a group of about 1 male and 6 females. He's got all the females to himself. There was another male, but he ended up killing that male. Doesn't like to share. Females once again. There's a little Otocinclus. Absolutely fantastic algae eaters. Love the ottos. And a very old black skirt. I think I found the male. Emperor tetra there in the corner. Let me see if I can zoom in on him. Yep, that's him. He will only turn for us now. There he goes off again. Beautiful colors on him. So here we are upstairs. That's what my desk looks like. That's the other 2 tanks. And we here once again Lulu is lapping up water from her bowl. Very curious, following me everywhere. Okay, you've got a nice view of one. As you can see, the front glass needs a little bit of a clean, my bad. And here to the right there's an internal power filter with a spray bar with a flow turned down. And to your left, once again, a sponge filter connected to a AC/DC pump that switches over to its battery when the power goes off. Now this is the first one I did with a deep substrate. It's now been sitting with a substrate for more than a year. And it's all mix and match of fish. The angels started their lives in here when they were really small. It's about just under 130 liters of water. It's also not a standard size. You'll see there's those diamond tetras in there. That's something that, let's just zoom in there on the big male. See if I can get him there to pose for us. Beautiful with their tinfoil like scales. The male of course gets the longer fins. There's a female right above him now. You'll see the difference. And then we've got some rosy tetras, so I love it in between the plants. And also, you guessed it, some guppies. There's a really nice female there being accosted by 2 of the males. There's another female there that's looking a bit, a couple of young females. And there's a female that looks a little bit thin and emaciated. She's lost a lot of weight. I think she's just run ragged by the males. I always have at least 2 females for every male. They dropped a lot of fry in it. The fry never survives in among the tetras. And of course, the cherry barbs. So look at the nice color on those male cherry barbs. Also a very underrated fish. There you see a female right above, right there in the middle of your picture. But the cherry barbs really are something special if they're in a nicely planted tank and they start coloring up a little bit. You can see on the spiderwood I've got some how do you pronounce it? Süßwassertang. It's German for freshwater seaweed growing on there. It's actually doing quite well, spreading all on the spiderwood. And there is some bulbitis that's transformed quite well from the immersed form. You'll see there's a new piece of bulbitis right underneath there. And you see then, right there is a bulbitis. When you buy it, it's still sort of semi-immersed and it's got a different color. And these leaves die off and then it becomes fully submerged. And then you'll see it's got a darker sort of green color. Not a fast growing plant, but relatively undemanding. Just some Java moss tied to a piece of wood. I like collecting small pieces of driftwood and then I use them for epiphytes. If I want to find a way of tying them down, there's a Siamese algae eater there as well. And those rosy tetras, I really like them as well. So when the angels went out of his tank, the guppies were added. So a slightly unusual combination with heart-shaped tetras and the guppies. But they do well. There's some of the females, and there's a very nice, I don't know if you call it snakeskin or lace, but that yellow one, I love the pattern on his body. That guppy male that you see swimming there is still a youngster. Totally different color. Very hard to focus on them. The camera varies. Cryptocorynes. Once again, what I know for a fact that in front here I've got Cryptocoryne undulata and Cryptocoryne axelrodi. And the rest I'm not sure what they are. There's some, I believe this one in the corner with crinkly sort of leaves, right there in the corner by the Java moss. Right there, I believe that is called, what is called Cryptocoryne crispulata, but I'm under correction. And right over there on the floor, on a piece of driftwood, there is some tropical one to grow flame moss that grows up like Don King's hair that I just put there to see how it does. In this tank also, you see there's some anubias, there's even some new anubia leaves. Every time you see a new leaf of anubias, you throw a party. They grow so slow. And then the Amazon swords are doing quite nicely as well. If I had to change anything, you know, that's the thing with these dirted substrate tanks, you know, it's not easy to, once something is planted, to move it without breaking that sand cap. But I try and cut off the small runners of Avalis when it starts interfering with my crypts. But I would maybe, if there's 3 Amazon swords planted there, I would maybe have planted less Amazon swords, because they do grow and they do crowd each other. But it's amazing how Vallisneria grows different in every tank. Same sort of water, pH is about 7.5. And that's a nice sort of compromise solution for the tetras and the live bearers. The live bearers don't like acidic water. My tap water is acidic and soft, but there's some bone meal in the soil layer beneath that sand, and I find that buffers your pH just a little bit higher, which makes it better for the live bearers. And here we are right in front of a Nano cube. You'll notice the workmanship on the tank is not all that great because I built it myself about 2 years ago, I think, with some glass that I got. And it used to be with aqua soil, and about 2 months ago or so I changed it to a deep substrate as well. The aqua soil worked quite well actually. There's no problem with it, but the plant sort of started having dieback. I think the aqua soil after a year it's done its lifetime. It's one of the cheaper ones, Easter aqua soil. And you can say same sort of theme. Epiphytes on spiderwood, all the little java fern plantlets I get from the bigger tanks that fall off the leaves, I go and I attach here. You see there's two kinds of java fern there. There's a bit of, I believe that's a Windelow type on your left. Now in here, there's the beta, that I believe it's a Nemo placat beta, and there's 9 ember tetras. And hiding away here, there's 2 ottos as well. Quite a lot of fish for such a small tank. It holds about 27 liters, or it's just under 7 gallons, just over 6 gallons. It's less with a deep substrate, it's more like 20 liters. But they do well in here. And there's a nerite snail as well. There I think I spot the otto's movement in between the crypts. Somewhere there down there. He's gone, but you know what an otto looks like. Tiny little sponge filter bubbling away at the back because of the power outages, as I've said, and there's a tiny small hang on the back filter. Only media here is sponge, there's nothing else. No other filter media besides the substrate and the hardscape. There's the otto showing himself. The bigger one of the two. It's been in here for a long while, that one. What would I do different in this tank? I'll find another solution for that small hang-on back filter. You know, it's not a nice thing in power outages. It's not like the tidal on the big tank, the motor sits on the outside. And I find especially the small Nano, the really small hang-on back filters. The big ones not so much. But the tiny ones, they get bubbles in the uplift tube, and then when the power comes on, they just sort of churn the water around in the filter body. And there, on the filter outlet, we look closely, there is the single nerite snail that I have in this tank. Love nerite snails. In the 30 gallon, there's quite a couple of them. In the big tanker 75, I can't have them because my clown loaches will make a meal out of them. I believe. I am not going to try it. But they don't eat your plants. They don't breed out of control. Like some of the Malaysian trumpet snails that hitchhiked their way in here. So I have to watch the feeding. If I overfeed, you'll immediately see the population of Malaysian trumpet snails suddenly starts growing. Now they're small in a manageable size. We're both of the ottos in the corner busy doing what they do. There's a little bit of blackbeard algae because I can't get a Siamese algae eater in here. It's too small for them. They're not nano fish. But you see there's a bit of blackbeard algae on that Buse there. Bucephalandra, or however you're supposed to pronounce it. I'll make a little video of how do I fix the blackbeard algae if I cannot have a Siamese algae eater. I believe Amano shrimps eat it as well, but I haven't had luck with Amano shrimps. I suspect my betta kills them. They just disappear. Maintenance on these tanks, all three of them, from the nano tank to the big tank. But I find that the deep substrate over time, not immediately, it takes a bit longer. In this nano tank it took about almost 2 months to get to that point. But at a certain point the anaerobic bacteria develops and the nitrate becomes less and less. I test the nitrate before every water change. At the nano tank it's stands at about 10 ppm before a water change, and the test kit that I have now only starts reading at 10 ppm, the nitrate, the NO3, and in the other tanks the color is somewhere there between 0 and 10. So I had a test kit that measured finer amounts, and then usually it was about 3 or 5 ppm, so the nitrates stay very, very low. The plants get the nutrients from the dirted substrate. I have a sort of all-in-one bloom and grow from microbe lift. I only use it once a week now. I find if I use it twice a week, then the crypts start melting some of their leaves. The Cryptocorini is a low-light plant, but it's not an easy plant in my opinion. The more you try and take care of it, the more you try and add fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, the more it starts throwing its toys out of a cot. Leave a comment and tell me what you find of Cryptocorinis. Do they like liquid fertilizers or don't they? Because I find the less I do of them, the more I leave the crypts alone, the better they do. In the tank that I've just shown you, I just sort of weed out the vallis when the runners start going right on top of the crypts. So every 4 weeks we do 40 to 50% water change. Not that the nitrates necessitate it, except maybe in the smaller tank. But of course, you know, there's other things in the water that needs to be replenished. Hormones of fish, I am told, needs to be thinned out, so I do that. But before these substrates, I used to do a water change of about 40%, 35 to 40% every week, every single week. And with it, I find there's less need for the water changes. I suppose the plants also help, but they're not, except for Vallisneria, they're not exceptionally fast-growing plants. So once again, tell me in the comment section what your experience been with all these plants and critters. That's it from me. If you watch this far, this is quite a long video, please press the thumbs up, like, and hit the subscribe. I will greatly appreciate it. And keep on taking care of our domestic denizens of the deep. And see you soon.